another episode of another jam session with Dr. Erica and Dr. Matt. Today we are going to be talking about something that I think personally Matt is a master of and I'm a master in training of, which is
I'm a
habits.
master in training as well.
I have to tell this story about you, yeah. Like I have to tell this story about you before we even get started though, of why I even wanted to do this video with you. Several years ago, we walked over to your house and I remember I came over and you were holding Lion, your daughter, and she was a little baby. You're on a vibe plate, you're on your phone, you're listening to something. And I'm like, this dude has something mastered that I really, really think I could get down with. And I realized in that moment, it was habits and it wasn't just like this crazy thing where people want to go from like the couch to CrossFit. It was like, what can I do today that's going to have the biggest impact on me right now? So I would love to talk about habits with you.
Yeah, habits are an interesting field. I actually was on a podcast with a local guy, Malcolm Godwin, here on his podcast recently. He was talking about habits of successful business people and entrepreneurs. And I said the same thing that I'll say now. It's like, habits are one of the most important things that you can do for your health, your healing, and success in life. And they're also some of the hardest things to do on a consistent basis because we have so many options of so many different things that we can do. And then it's also the actual like willpower to be able to do those things on a consistent basis. And there will be seasons of life for me personally, why I made a joke, I'm like, I am absolutely not a master, but for the last 10 plus years, I've been doing my best to create healthy habits that are going to support my system, which we're going to probably get into, the ebbs and flows that come with it. So framing this conversation, habits are a moving target, and there'll be some times and some days you are freaking on it, and there'll be other times that maybe you're not. It's not about beating yourself up if you're not. It's about that first piece, as we always talk about, awareness to make changes.
And I think when people think about habits, or they have these big ideas for their life, they're like, I want to have longevity, I want to be healthy, I want to be whole, I want to have all these things, and they'll set these really big goals. And I think what we both have kind of understood is those things don't just happen overnight, but you can kind of tailor yourself in a direction where the small little things you do today have a way of making you become that person over time. And I think it's interesting too, because when people show up in this office, they're in a place of like, I can't even think about what I want to even do. I have so many patterns running on autopilot that the second I get in front of anything where I want to make a big change or make a goal, I freeze. And I'm like, that is, I think, the first step in defining what even a pattern is and how that affects our neurology. And I think you just said it best. We were just jamming about this, but with what patterns fire together, wire together. And I think that whenever I think about that, those things have to be in such alignment with each other that, oh my God, I lost my phone. What I was going to say is, I don't know. I was going on with it.
Go with patterns that fire together.
Yeah, sorry. I want you to talk about that. So when people come in this office, I think a lot of times they're going through something where a lot of patterns are kind of running on autopilot. And even a conversation like this, something really simple of like, what do you want for your life? What would be a win for you? They kind of go blank. So I want to start from that person who comes in and they're like, I don't even know what I want for my life, to that person that's doing all the things. Maybe not consistently, maybe not every day, but they're trying to do all these things and they don't seem to be getting the gains that they're quite looking for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's their intention? Is there a vision? Is there focus? And what is their attention that they're giving it to? Because that also is the level of potency. Because you can be running around like a chicken with your head cut off and doing a whole bunch of stuff, but you're not going to really get anywhere. Yeah. But the thoughtful, intentional things is a different energy and frequency. And you mentioned something like Hebb's law, is that the neurons that fire together wire together. So essentially doing things that are in alignment and doing multiple of those things, they just start working better to create that shift and change. And the macro goals that we want, we can't, we talk about manifesting, creating our life. But the reality is we can't actually make your boss promote you. You can't make that person love you. You can't just go take that Ferrari, right? Yeah. Like there's steps along the way that we can collapse that wave relatively fast if we do little things that start to compound, which we're going to talk about later. But yeah.
So I was thinking about this. I was thinking when someone comes in here and they're kind of at that place, what they would maybe need or what would really set them up for success with habits. And there are three things that I can think of that I think that are so important whenever you think about anything for your life. You just nailed the first one, and it's alignment. Whenever I think about anything something it is that I want, I have to ask myself, is this in alignment with my bigger goal, my bigger vision, who I want to be? Because I think a lot of times those subconscious patterns can speak really loudly. Like we'll have people come in here and they're like, I want to make X amount of money. And I'm like, I hear that. Do you believe you can make X amount of money? And they'll start doing all these things that they think a person with that kind of money would start doing, whereas in their heart of hearts, they don't even believe that they're worthy of it, can do it. So I think something in alignment and something we really believe is possible for us is the first step. And maybe that belief, like you said, is the moving target. As we keep going on the path, that target might start changing for you. But I think making things easy and making things consistent is really, for me, what has changed the game of like, if I'm already doing something, if I'm already waking up in the morning and say I'm meditating or I'm doing breath work and I do that every morning, I like to do something else. Like I just learned something recently, like grip strength is one of the number one testers of longevity and aging. I don't know if you knew this, but I'm like, so I'm going to reverse engineer that. I'm going to start hanging every morning right after I meditate, right after I do breath work. I will hang for a really long time now. And I'm like, I'm seeing changes in my body, in my life. And it's these really small things that I can do every day, super easy and super in alignment with the goal that I have.
I heard if you can do 40 push-ups, that's a good test of longevity well. Yeah, I can do 40 push-ups. Now if I haven't done them in a while, I might have to break them apart into 10 and 20 increments, right? Which is totally fine. But I think just based on what you're saying, that big goal, if you do not believe that that is possible, so say going back to the most fundamental thing, right? If you don't believe that it's possible, that is an energy and frequency in yourself that's probably going to limit the growth and change. So you can either trick yourself into believing it, or you can focus on the micro things that you can do. But before we get into that, we wanted to talk about why would someone develop bad habits? Why would someone sabotage themselves? Why do people not have habits? Is because we live life a certain way for a certain period of time. Every action, physical, mental, emotional, and chemical, creates a experience through our nervous system that creates certain neural wiring. And like we talked about, those neural firings that happen, they start wiring together. And it's almost like laying down concrete or doing something over and over and over and over and over again. It's like those neural synapses, those neural firings get stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's why if we do something good over and over again, it's going to be easier to do. But if we do something poorly for ourselves, and poorly is maybe the wrong word, but something that isn't serving us, like having negative thoughts, eating bad foods, not moving our body, because that is actually an action. Not moving is part of it, right? So these are then habits that are formed, and then those habits are actions or non-actions that then create emotions, that then those emotions create thoughts, and then it's this vicious feedback loop between thoughts, actions, and emotions. So it's about, when people come in here, the very first step is to break the pattern, change the pattern, slow down those patterns, so new neural circuitry, new neural patterns that we actually want, can actually lay on top of that. But if we've been doing something for a really long time, it's like we've laid down concrete every day for the last 25 years, we're going to need a couple of sledgehammers to really get in there and break that up before we build something new.
Whenever I think about habits, I think the opposite of a habit is almost like an experience. And sometimes I think people get the two kind of confused, where an experience is one thing that happens and it's almost like, whoa, and then your whole system kind of has to integrate, adapt, reorganize afterwards, where habits for a lot of people, whenever they'll come in here and they'll say things they want, I'm like, what's the next best step almost, whenever they have those subconscious disbeliefs, I guess, because the habit is the thing that it's almost like over time, the thing you can do with the smallest amount of energy that leads to change will be the most long lasting for you, because your body can actually adapt and integrate to it rather than setting out these really big goals. Like if I want to run and I'm like, I want to run 10 miles today, I'm probably not going to be able to run 10 miles tomorrow.
You are definitely not running 10 miles today.
I'm not running 10 miles today or tomorrow.
A mile? Can you run a mile?
I don't know about that. But
she moves in other ways.
Exactly. But it's like if somebody wants to run, for instance, it's like to start that as a habit rather than this one marathon experience actually allows our body, I think about it with bandwidth. I'm like, anything that's 10% outside my comfort zone, my body, it's like a good stress, like a eustress is what they call it. And I'm like, my body can adapt to that, integrate in real time to that, and then actually take that information and add to my complexity. Whereas like an experience, like just getting up and running a marathon, all of a sudden my physiology, I'm not a marathon runner. So the second I go to do something like that, everything in my body, the same way that we set these goals that we don't believe for ourselves, have this really big distance between them. And that same distance catches up to us where we have to integrate it over time, weeks, days, months, years. And I think that's what makes our process so unique for people too, because this is the most subtle, this is the most gentle, light thing someone can do for their body. And then over time, they're like, it's like the healing adds up.
Yeah, but it's profound though. Those gentle changes create a profound change because we're not trying to gut the kitchen and rebuild it in a single day. Yeah. It's like we break down the walls, then we plan, and then we create our dream and our masterpiece. And like what you said, like making it really easy. If you are a couch potato and you want to run 10 miles, no, like today, start with a half a mile brisk walk, and then it's a 3/4 mile, a little bit more brisk walk, and like that's continuing to add on top of each other. People talk about, I just can't meditate, I've tried. I'm like, well, what do you do? They're like, I just try to sit there for 20 minutes and close my eyes and breathe. And I go, perfect, let's do this. Let's do 3 minutes. Let's just do 3 minutes every day. Can you do 3 minutes? They're like, yeah. And then they start doing 3 minutes. Then they come back to me a couple days, weeks later, if I've shared this with people, and this was my own journey going, and it's like, you get there and you're like, okay, I can commit to 3 minutes. It will stop you from not doing it by making it super easy to do. Yeah. Like I think James Clear in Atomic Habits, which I know we're going to talk about, I think he calls it like the barrier of entry. Yeah. Make it super simple. Make it like, don't try to put a big audacious goal like I'm going to work out for 90 minutes. I'm just going to work out for 10 minutes. Every day for the next several weeks. So just making it easy for yourself, and then you sit down, you meditate for 3 minutes, then you get there, you're like, oh, you know what? I think I could sit here for another couple minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and then eventually it's 20, then it's 30, then it's 40. So that's like that compounding on top of each other by just making it simple at first, and then it's easier.
There's something with the dopamine there for me too. Like I don't know what it exactly is, but to accomplish that, and I think they do talk about this in Atomic Habits too, but it's like the smallest thing. This guy, the author, we just talked about this, he essentially got hit by like a baseball bat and like fractured his face. They said his eyes were like dislocated, like inflammation in his brain. And he was a baseball player. And he basically saw that for himself to heal from this, it was going to take small, consistent gains. And over time, what I started to hear from him, or at least what I know from our work and what we heard in the book too, is that just to start a new pattern starts with slowing down the old. And with him, he had all this time for healing. He had all this time for just to sit with himself really, because he really couldn't do much. A lot like Dispenza's story too, where he actually got to sit there and then just kind of reconstruct day by day what it is that he wants to be doing with the energy that he had at hand. And I'm like, that is somebody who like, because it's somebody who, whatever you do the day before, the night before, you wake up and you're mad, and I'm Erica and we're kind of back at it again. Like those experiences, so to speak, that we do one time can be really great for us. If he would have just done one thing, awesome, like gone to a treatment or a surgery, like that's what he was talking about. He was like, I need something that's going to heal me fully. So he knew that it had to come from the cellular level, and he knew that it had to come from small micro things.
Yeah, I think something you just said triggered something within me too that I think is actually really important. Like setting up habits, like what is that intention? Like if we do habits to get rid of something and focus on like, I want to do these things so I get out of pain, or I just something of the energy of like, I just want to get rid of something and focusing on the lack. That isn't a great motivator. Versus it can be initially, but over the long term, more of the motivation is, I want to get to bed earlier and wake up early to get my stuff done and move my body because I can't wait to feel better, and I can't wait to create that abundant life, and I get to spend more time with my family and my kids by doing these things. So it kind of, because habits will come up and like, it's just so easy to not want to do it, but when you connect to why you're actually doing it, it makes it so much easier to be consistent. And we were talking about consistency earlier, and I do want to say something how it does get so much easier. Like I'm in the process, like again, I've gone off and on of being really super consistent with some things and some days. We got someone walking in, so that's in the background if you hear it. But we have these things that happen from a consistency standpoint. Something I heard, I talked about push-ups, doing push-ups every single day. I have a friend who lives in Vancouver, his name is Thomas, and for the last 5 years, he has been doing his age in push-ups I'm pretty
Oh my
sure
gosh.
every single day for 4
Whoa.
or 5 years. It's an incredible feat. I have not accomplished that, but something he said that I'll never forget is that if I can do it today, I can do it tomorrow. And in my mind, I really thought about that. And then I met this other guy playing basketball at the local YMCA. I played twice a week for a very long period of time, and I loved it. But there's a 67-year-old man out there, and he was balling out there as a 67-year-old with 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds. And he wasn't dunking, but like he was still 67, but he was in okay shape for that age. But he just never stopped doing it. So if we just stay consistent, and what that looks like is just like, if I can do it today, I know I can do it tomorrow. So if you never stop, and again, you can stop for a day or a week or something like that, but get back on it, you'll always be able to do the things that you really want to do by just keeping that consistency. That is always stuck in my head, and I just wanted to share that.
I'm keeping that grip strength thing then.
You just never stop, because if you can do it today, you can do it tomorrow. And if tomorrow is every single day that you're present in that day, you can keep doing it into your 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s.
I love that. That's how my brain works. And that to me feels like, again, like that 10% outside your bandwidth, do the thing because that's creating a neurology within yourself too. But I think this kind of leads me to my next point of what we do when we think about a habit, or whenever somebody sits down in front of us and they have a habit or a goal that they want to create for themselves. I kind of want to reverse engineer what we do, and maybe that will help you guys too, whenever you're thinking about what habits you want to do in your life, because I think that can be a really big, confusing thing. And my time is my energy. So I think for both of us, we like to do things that are already in alignment, but that process for us is kind of innate. So I'd like to kind of break that down. And I think it's the same for both of us. For me, whenever I think about anything that I want in my life, I start to think about how it will make me feel, because I know that if I can hold that emotion, that vibration for any amount of time, my neurology will start rewiring as if it's happening right now. So I'll start with what I want to feel in my life. And for me, like I said, longevity right now is something I really want to feel into. I want to be flexible. I want to be strong. I want to be adaptable. And I'm thinking about all these words. And then I think about, what would a person with really high levels of vitality be doing in their 80s, 90s, 100s? And it's not necessarily like doing backflips. Maybe it is. But for me, like, it's super simple movements. It's super simple how I'm looking at my body, my breath, and I'll take a really big goal like that, and I'll be like, what is this person doing? And then I'll kind of break that down into maybe qualities or aspects, but then I will start looking at my day of like, where can this fit in?
Yeah.
And I already have so much time in the morning for myself and so much time in the evening for
No
myself.
kids over
No
there.
kids. So
Hours.
the time I have now is wild, but it's like, now for me, like, I can start stacking these habits almost of like, this leads to longevity. It also really aligns with my goal of getting really introspective with myself and being a compassionate human. And I'll start to do these things where it's one goal dips into multiple pots. That's when I know I have hit my sweet spot. I am curious what habits you've got going on right now, or what you're looking at.
Well, I think what you just said is really important. Like, you have this bigger vision, then incorporating it throughout your day. And like, that truly is why like these jam sessions, we do this, is because we legitimately, like Monica and I personally, and then you guys right behind us, just because you're a few years behind going to chiropractic school, like, we have been committed to learning about health and healing and the journey of that, the ups and downs, the swings that we have went through for over a decade. And so when you do things long enough and keep learning, you have that active mind to like want to get better, it just becomes more innate within you. And like gratitude journaling, there's thousands of research studies of how gratitude is super, super important. And back in the day, I think me and Monica even did a jam session on this, like, we used to write it out, 5 things we were grateful for every single day. And like, now I haven't done that in years, but I actually feel I still get the benefits of that habit, because I've trained my neurology and nervous system to really be more grateful for things. And then there's times that I'm like, I want to get back to doing that. And so these little habits, these things that you can find in the day, like, you have to put attention, focus on it first. Anything new, you have to give a little bit more energy towards it. But then, like we talked about the neural circuitry, it just becomes a part of your life. And so I think something that you were trying to share was like, these small changes and these small intentions, these small focuses, day in, day out, they create that pathway within the body to make it a more natural change. And again, taking your view outside of just one day, 1 week, 1 month, and expanding your time horizon to months, years, and decades, that's when massive shifts in your life happen. And I can say that from people that we've worked with here at REV, and also just my own life, who I am and what we've been able to create in 10 years. I never could fully like see it, but I could feel it back in the day, and practice of living from the end instead of living to get to the end, and living to like try to like feel what it feels like, just come from that place of all my needs are met, I'm in the perfect place, and what are the things that I can do on a day in, day out basis to start moving us a little closer to that goal without the attachment of it's got to happen today, it got to happen tomorrow kind of thing.
I think that's like when I know when someone's healing, like whenever their goals, or when we start having these conversations that aren't necessarily like the right now, like whenever they start talking bigger picture, that's whenever I'm actually like, now let's break this down into what we could be doing day in and day out. Because I think a lot of people come in immediately to see us and they're like, it would be great to be out of pain tomorrow. And I'm like, it would be, wouldn't it? And that may be the case. And I know for a system to go through any kind of growth, to go through any kind of change, it is going to have some ups and downs. And these habits almost become, like you're kind of saying it, like our new set point of who we are and who we become. So the next time pain comes up, even in someone's body, like even after they go through our process, they really move out of a lot of aches and pains. The next time pain comes up, it's almost like, let's reframe this entire thing from the outside perspective, even on pain, of like, we start to talk about like, this is coming up for me. What is this telling me? And that's truly the goal, because that person is now seeing the whole picture, or the bigger picture at least. I don't know if anybody's seeing the whole picture.
Well, I mean, you just said, reminded me of like, we have these thoughts, intentions, there's actionable steps there, but we will rise to our desires and wants and needs throughout time, but we will fall to our habits and to our system. So life is this ebb and flow, in and out, up and down journey, right? It's not 3 steps forward, 3 steps back. It's, if you're setting the right intentions, you're moving up and to the right, but there's these waves that happen that even like if it's a crappy time 5 years in the journey, your crappy time might even be better than some of the good days 5 years ago, right? And so we rise to the level of our North Star and our desires, but we fall to the level of our habits and our systems. And I see that in my life when my habits are on point, like it's automatic, right? We're now in REV, over the last year, we've grown tremendously from the amount of people that we're serving. And I know it's a huge piece of it is because we have set the systems in place that when we go on vacation, or we, have a long weekend or something like that, normally where we wouldn't do the things that we need to do, now it's a system, it's automatic, and there's way less of that dip per se and slowing down of people coming in and going through this process because we've set up those systems. And so that being said, for yourself and your own habits in life, there will be times where you're on it and you're consistent. But if you do it long enough and you set it up and make it easy, the times that you don't want to do it, it'll become more automatic, and you set that program in your autonomic nervous system.
I have one last thing to say.
You can have 2 more things.
Maybe I have 2 more things to say.
You got one last
I remember when we were even talking about this with all the growth in our business, I remember hearing either a mentor or someone say at one point, they were like, you can be pulled by a vision, like that's what we had, and you can be pushed by a purpose of like what you do every day, serving people. But your habits and your goals, if you can align them to be like almost like signs along the way, like if I'm driving from here to Pennsylvania, like I need to know when I pass West Virginia. I need to know where I'm at, kind of in the trajectory of that, of like who I am right now to who I'm becoming. And I think these habits kind of bridge the gap between that in a way of our goals now for REV are not even just like, they're really like, what can I be doing today? And the things that we start knocking off like that, it's like our habits become the goal, like to do all the things that we're already doing, like to, I'll just use our example of REV, but we will put out a lot of content, and we're like, our goals now are like this video to work on this, to accomplish this, to do this. And our goals, whenever I see all of our goals lined up, I'm like, that kind of office is the office that we used to set goals for, like the bigger picture type of.
I mean, let's think about someone who wants to feel really healthy and good. You cannot just make that, if you're not healthy and good, you cannot just get there tomorrow. You have to do all these little things. You can focus on, I think the term is like lag versus lead. The lead is your goal, and the lag is the things that you're doing in the moment consistently to lead up to there, and those 1% shifts. And it's also just like an energy and frequency within your body that if you're wanting to feel a certain way, like the energy to do those things, you are putting focus on that, which is then going to create a shift in your physiology, which is then going to create more health and vitality, which hopefully then will change your perception system to see and attract more of those things that you're desiring in your life as well. So it's a full feedback loop. And I do want to circle back to like the consistency standpoint. If I can do it tomorrow, I can do it the next day and the next day and the next day. Like momentum is a powerful, powerful tool. Think about like a kid on a swing, right? Like to first start a swing, a lot of energy to like get the legs pumping, right? Especially like I'm thinking my daughter Lion, who doesn't know how to start the swing right away, right?
She's all in.
And she's better now, but like once it gets going, whether it's you pushing it or not, you actually don't have to like push it every single time they come, but like every couple times, just a little nudge along the way. That's what we talk about, people going through this healing process, like the consistency standpoint. Momentum is freaking powerful because if the ball is moving and just every once in a while you give it a little tap, it's going to continue going, but it's when it stops completely. It's not that it can't start again. It just takes a whole lot more energy to have to do that. So it's like, and I learned that in James Clear's Atomic Habits, it's like, if you're having habits, you're doing them good for a few weeks, this is really important. If you miss a day, just don't miss the next day. Just don't miss the next. Don't beat yourself up for missing that day. Or if like it's something weekly, you missed a week. Like we now have this thing where we're doing these videos every 2 weeks, and we're doing 2 videos. Like we're very consistent. But if 1 week we can only get one, we'll just do another one the following week. We have it set in our systems in place to be able to do that.
Don't miss 2 days in a row.
Just don't miss 2 days in a row. I think that makes it.
Up for it.
I think that's something that makes it really easy for people because I think when people don't do something that they've been doing for a couple days or weeks, they like just give up. Like I fell off the wagon. You can get back on the wagon. You fell off, but it's still rolling. The horse is still going. You can jump back on there. Just like don't say it's 10 feet away, I can't get there. No, just like get back on the horse and be able to get that momentum rolling again.
That's I was going to say, the last thing I wanted to say was like the pitfalls basically of creating habits. And I think momentum, you just said it, that is the number one thing. If we stop the ball rolling, and I think that's what it is, people forget one day and they're like, well, I didn't do it today, not going to do it this whole week. And we kind of give ourselves that out. But I think there's another thing that happens too on the other side of that, which is like our body is constantly changing, growing, evolving. And I don't think that it's like these things that we necessarily see every day that are changing. Hair, nails, skin, we know that. But whenever I really think about that, I'm like, I'm going to be a completely different person in 4.5 years when my body completely regenerates on average. And I think about that, it's like the smallest things are resetting my body. It's probably the smallest things I'm also doing in my life. So I think setting off really big goals is one really big pitfall. I think momentum breaking or momentum inconsistency. And the third one is almost whenever we hit those upper limits, if we don't have the bandwidth behind us to keep pushing through, because it sometimes does feel like a beginner when we want to create a new habit. It's like once you break through that upper limit, now it's like, here's level 1 again. And I think that whenever we do that, it's like we can get a little bit complacent there too. So what I always remind myself is, where am I at right now? Is this what I want? Where am I going? And I think with that, it's like all we need to know is which direction to point our head in, because we're always changing, we're always evolving. It's just, where are we going? And just to be in the driver's seat, but also along for the ride.
Yeah, the upper limits thing. Gay Hendricks wrote a book called The Big Leap, and me and Monica read this several years ago. I think you guys have read it as well. Just like we all have this tendency to make shifts and changes, and then there's like we get to a certain point, we're consistent, and we just self-sabotage ourselves, right? I see it over and over and over again in people that go through this process, my own life, Monica, my family, my kids even, right? Like we're doing something great, and then there's just like this feeling of not this feeling because we're actually unaware of it. We actually just sabotage ourselves subconsciously because maybe we don't feel deep down we deserve it, or that it's so new. It's like, oh, I reached the sun. I gotta like freak out. Like I start freaking out, right? So I think that it's understanding that again, the ebbs and flows will happen. We will reach places that we feel like we've made significant shifts. And again, not letting ourselves fall all the way back down. And again, the ebbs and flows will happen, that once you do hit that upper limit, as time goes on, you become more aware of it. You can actually shatter that glass ceiling instead of being a concrete ceiling, it's a glass ceiling that's like, cool, I've gotten to this point before where I made changes. Normally I fall off, but now I'm actually gonna find a way to really move through this, and just by consistent focus and attention, that's really when people start making it happen.
And there's always more, there's always more.
There's always more.
There's always more. So complacency to me, whenever I think about that, I'm like, I think people come in here and they're like, I had a headache today, and they will lose it. And they're like, I'm like, but remember when you first came in and you were having a headache every day?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I think that's even a glass ceiling sometimes for people too we can do a whole topic on that.
Yeah.
But it's almost just like when we push through these things day in and day out, it causes a resiliency in ourselves. And I don't know about you, but I've been hearing this over and over of grit being one of our strongest assets, of like whatever the challenge is, whatever the boredom is, whatever is in front of us, we keep pushing through in a way of like we have a focused direction.
Yeah, I think even within that grit, people can feel like, I gotta just make it happen and do it. There's a piece to that, and there's a time for that, but I think the more powerful we can be is that a challenge comes up, something comes up, it's one, trusting that it's meant for us, which we've talked about, and two, like, how can I find flow with this curveball that's been thrown either by myself or someone else to just navigate this with a little bit more ease and grace. I think that's the most important thing too, is just being gentle on yourself. And you said something about just like, there's always more. Yes, there's always more, but it's also like, again, why are you doing this? If you are focusing on habits and you're wanting to change, it's because you're not happy with certain things, right? So that's a tuning in. You may be completely content with exactly where you are and who you are. And if you are in the 0.1% of people of the most highest of consciousness and connection. And I commend you. Me personally, I'm not there. I'm in a process of continuing to grow. And I know that if I don't grow, that I'm not going to be satisfied in. And that's why there'll be ebbs and flows of times of being super on, doing new habits and being consistent. And sometimes where I'm a little bit more lax. But overall, my mentality is growth. And I think that's a really important piece. And then I do want to end before we finish this, like we're talking generally about like the consistency of habits. But I just think real quick, just ending with like, you talked about some things that you do, and I don't want to like tell people what to do. Like you have to wake up at 7 o'clock and move your body and do that stuff. But I think breaking it down simply, like if you do anything, do something for your mind, do something for your body, and do something for your soul. So that can look so different, but learning something new for your mind, growing, trying something new, or maybe a meditation, a quiet time for your soul, just to connect inwards, being out in nature, and then your body, movement. Movement is so important for life and vitality. So focusing maybe on those 3 things a day. If you're having trouble, like what kind of habit should I do? Do something for your mind, do something for your body, and do something for your soul.
And if you're crazy like us, maybe one thing can fit all 3 boxes.
Maybe one thing can just fit all 3. Yeah, totally. Awesome.
Well, anyways, it was awesome jamming with you, as always. Awesome sharing with you guys. If you're a part of our REV community, if you're on our YouTube channel, please follow, like, subscribe, share with a friend. We are here. We are happy to help, and more to come.